for this webinar. And I want you to know that this webinar is brought to you by the AME Zion Health Equity Advocates, acronym HEAL, the partnership that we have in collaboration with the Community Engaged Research Initiative, commonly known as CERI, and with the Duke Clinical Translational Science Institute, CTSI. And this is a platform for hearing. It's a platform for learning about issues that are important to our community. In today's webinar, we'll address kidney disease in the African-American community. Now, let me say as a form of housekeeping, please keep yourselves muted so that there's no interference and distractions from the speakers. We do welcome questions, and please include your questions in the chat. And if you would like to speak, just raise your hand. You have the little emoji hand, so you can raise that hand. Now, I would like to introduce our presenter, Dr. B. Angelo Birch, Sr. I have known him for many, many, many years, and he is the father of 4 children and the grandfather of 3. He accepted his calling into the preaching ministry at the age of 7. He's licensed at the age of 14. He's ordained at the age of 19 and received his first pastoral appointment at the age of 20. So you can see that Dr. Birch has some age upon him, but he seems to age well. He currently serves as the executive director for the African American Community Collaborative Incorporated. He's an adjunct chaplain for Duke Regional Hospital and serves as a North Carolina state trustee for the North Carolina Museum of Arts. Dr. Birch holds certificates and diplomas for Christian education, an associate degree in counseling, an associate degree in business administration, a Bachelor of Arts, an MDiv, and he has earned his Doctor of Philosophy in Religious Studies and awarded an honorary Doctor of Divinity. Dr. Birch serves as chairman of the Families and Communities Rising Board of Directors. He's the chairman of the Board for Black Empowerment. He is the executive board he's on the executive board for African American COVID response team. He's on Access to Care Committee, the Durham Partnership for Health at Durham, secretary for the Homeless Services Advisory Committee, Metalog, ACP, CTS Advisory Council, the ACP, PFA Executive Board, and you can ask him if you want to know what all those acronyms stand for. He's on the Urban Ministries Board of Directors, and he's on many, many other boards. He's the only man I know that carries 3 cell phones with him because people need to get in contact with him. He is a member of the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Masons, where he serves as the Worshipful Grand Deputy Director of Community Outreach. He serves in the Holy Royal Arch Masons, Royal Select Master Mason. He's a Tar Heel Commandery Knights Templar, member of the Durham Consistory, and Order of the Mystic Shrine. Dr. Birch, it is now time for your testimonial.
Thank you, Dr. Dowdy. I'm going to pull over here so I can at least turn my camera on. And thank you all for this opportunity. And not to waste time, I do want to say that unfortunately, kidney disease became real for me, too real, back in 2005. I unfortunately had contacted and ingested some mold into my system. My doctor had told me, and the position, that I held at that time as a director of public safety, we had to go get our physicals. Unfortunately, I kept saying too busy, I was too busy, I'll get it done, I'll take care of it. And as things began to progress, first I noticed that I couldn't stay out of the restroom. If I was driving from Florida to North Carolina, it was hard to um, make that drive without constantly stopping to go to the bathroom to urinate. And it was bothering me. And I kept saying, I'm going to go back to the doctor. They had already told me to take blood tests. But as Black men, many of us sometimes we think we're too busy. We don't want to go to the doctor. But I knew I had to have that physical and I had to get things done. And then it started with the taste of metal. Everything I ate tasted like metal. Nothing tasted right. I couldn't eat. I didn't want to eat because it just didn't taste right. Cutting all of this, I went to the emergency room. Well, my doctor called me and he said, I need you to go to the ER. And I said, okay, I've got one meeting I need to do, and then I'll go to the ER. And he said, Angelo, no, go to the ER now. Go now. Do not come to my office. Don't go to your meeting. Go to the ER now. So I called my office, told them I was going to be late and to go ahead and start the meeting. I went to the ER. Long story short, I went from walking into the ER. They were shocked because they didn't think I'd be able to walk because they had seen the blood test. And I went from that into ICU where I spent the next 30 days. My kidneys had failed. Um, all I knew about kidney disease at that time was that after, if you go on dialysis, I had seen my grandmother and folk around in the community, they go on dialysis in 5 years, they're dead. And that was in my mind. I did not want to go on dialysis. They tried all they could to get my kidneys to get back to working, but both of them were gone. And so I had to go on dialysis while I was in ICU. It was a long haul. Dialysis is not fun. It's scary. Many times I had to deal with the fact of people that were putting the needles in my arm to do the blood work. Just didn't know what they were doing, and my arm would swell. So then I couldn't take dialysis because there was no way of getting the blood to be drawn and placed back into my body because my arm was swelled too bad. My children had to watch me go through this. This was one of the worst parts of it. And I'm going to end this and let the professionals do this. But it taught me a lesson that when you start seeing things happen with your body, take care of it. Don't wait, don't wait, don't wait. The trauma that we put our families through and the trauma that I put my family through was greater than anything that I personally had to experience. Because it taught me how to navigate the health system. That's a horror story on its own. I don't wish that on anyone. And that was one of the catalysts that got me into working and being an advocate in the health field for African Americans, especially for African American males, because many times we don't like to ask the questions to the doctors. They know, they've been to school for that, but you have to advocate for yourself. And even during that time in asking questions, I was labeled non-compliant because they would change the medicine and I would question it. They would change something, I would question it. I never missed dialysis. I didn't miss any appointments, but because I challenged them and they didn't like being challenged, they labeled me non-compliant and took me off of the kidney transplant list. I left Durham and went to Johns Hopkins. And when I met with the kidney people there and told them, what had happened, and they looked at my records and saw that I had not missed anything, then I went and my transplant came within a year of me being listed with Johns Hopkins. And at this time, I had been on dialysis for 6.5 years. I had my transplant in 2009. it is now 2022, and by the grace of God, I am still moving. I am still working. I am still going strong by God's grace, and because I do what the doctors say do. And if something's there, I do ask questions, even now with my nephrologist. But the basis of all of this is get checked out. Don't wait. Don't wait till you start tasting metal. Don't wait until you just constantly run to the restroom. Get checked out. Find out what's going on with your body and move forward with that. And don't let people just tell you you have to do this or you have to do that. Ask questions. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to ask why. If I can ask God why, I know I can ask the doctor why. But it's okay to ask why. And be vigilant and be an advocate for your own health, because truly no one can advocate for you like you can. But it's hard to do it when you're dead. And, I lost my job, good job, because of dialysis, because the company that I worked for at the time did not want to take that and say, if you get into a fight, something happens, we can get sued from your family. I lost my job. I lost everything, but God gave it back. And so today I'm better now. I'm moving along. I thank God for transplant. I think that's it. I'm going to let Dr. Olabisi go ahead, Dr. Dowdy.
Dr. Birch, before Dr. Olabisi comes on, can you speak to the importance of research with your experience?
Yes, sir, definitely. Medicines that I was given, quite a few of them did not work for me. And when I was telling the physicians that those medicines were adversely affecting me, they were telling me no. And they were saying, oh, no, we give them to everyone. And I remember telling one of my physicians, I really don't care what you give everyone. I'm telling you what it works for me. And that's when I found out that, a lot of these medicines that African Americans especially are receiving, we weren't in those clinical trials. We weren't in those research pods. And so it's very important that as African Americans, we do participate in clinical trials, that we do take the opportunity and the time if we can get into a research for medicines, because our bodies react differently than others. And so we need to be in those clinical trials so the medicines that we receive work well for us as a people, work well for us. Because if we're not in those research trials, then we're taking medications that honestly, no one can tell how it's going to affect us until it's too late. And that becomes an issue. That becomes a problem. So the research part is very important. And that again is why I work so hard with CIRI and CTSI.
Thank you, Dr. Birch.
Yes, sir.
And that's so important for us to understand the importance of research and how it affects the African-American community. Thank you so much for your testimony. All right, and now we shall hear from Dr. Ope Olabisi. Dr. Opeyemi Olabisi is a physician scientist, and he's an assistant professor of medicine at Duke School of Medicine. He practices adult nephrology and conducts NIH, National Institute of Health, funded research that leverages patient-derived stem cell models to elucidate mechanisms underlying APOL1 nephropathy. And if you're not sure what that is, he'll tell you all about it. He is a recipient of several awards, including NIH Director's New Innovator Award, Whitehead Scholar, and he's an Albert Einstein College of Medicine Alumni Rising Star, and he has won that Investigator Award. Dr. Olabisi received a bachelor's degree from the City College of New York, his MD and PhD degree from Albert Einstein College of Medicine, his internal medicine residency at MGH, a nephrology fellowship with postdoctoral research fellowship at Harvard Medical School. At this time, let us prepare to hear this wonderful presentation from this dynamic and brilliant physician scientist, Dr. Olabisi.
Reverend Dr. Daudi, thank you so very much. Can you hear me? I want to make sure I'm on mute. Can you hear me? Okay, thank you.
Yes, we can.
Reverend Dr. Daudi, thank you so very much for moderating, for the very kind and generous introduction, both of myself and Dr. Birch. And Dr. Birch, your experience, just even though I've heard you the first time when you related your experience with kidney disease, I'm always very grateful about your generosity to share from your experience, because what I'm talking about, I will be talking about research, what I read about, what I do in the lab and all that, but you are describing what you experience. And that physical personal experience is something that people can relate to. I can relate to it. So thank you for sharing of that experience. And you've literally, in the basketball term, you've given me a layup. Let's hope I connect, because you've actually sprinkled along pretty much everything we'll be talking about today. The silence of kidney disease, the experience, the hardness of dialysis, and hopefully when one is fortunate, how transplant can be beneficial. But unfortunately, not everyone that needs transplant gets it. So today I'll be talking about kidney disease in our community. And I thank everyone for making time to come on this very nice, warm evening day. I know you could be outside enjoying yourself, but thank you for being here. I hope it will be worth your while. So today, why are we here? I said we are here for 4 reasons. We'll be going over these 4 reasons again and again and again. So over the next 20 minutes, I want to impress on you 4 factors. 1, that there's a high burden of kidney failure in the Black community. 2, that there's a lack of kidney disease awareness in the Black community. 3, that there's no specific treatment for the kind of kidney disease that I will be talking to you about that's caused by the APOL1 gene mutation. And lastly, despite the high burden of kidney disease and the lack of awareness and treatment, whatnot, that Blacks are underrepresented in clinical trials. Dr. Daudi mentioned this, Dr. Birch mentioned this, but I'll be fleshing this out further. And lastly, we'll talk about how you can help. It's easy to describe the problem, but we'll be ending on the research program that's ongoing through this partnership with Hill as one of our partners and working from Duke. So maybe in the chat as we go along, if you don't mind, in the chat box, if you can type, if you know somebody who has kidney disease, not the name of the person, but as in my case here, it's my childhood friend who has kidney disease and he was on dialysis. I also had an uncle who had kidney disease and he actually passed from it. Now, as you can tell from Dr. Birch's experience, some people had kidney disease and thankfully, to the grace of God, they were able to get transplant and all. But I want us here to bear witness to the burden of this disease in the community. So if you don't mind, a relative or how the person is related to you, no name of the person, please, so that we can maintain patient confidentiality and privacy here. So the first problem is the high burden of kidney disease in our community. And I call that problem number 1. So that Black Americans are 4 times more likely to develop kidney failure than white Americans. So if you look in the general US population, African Americans represent about 13% of US population. But if you look at people who are on dialysis, Black represent 35% of people on dialysis. You heard that right. So 13% of US population representing 35% of patients on dialysis. So you can see the significant overrepresentation of Blacks on dialysis. And the reason for this is that African Americans have high rates of developing kidney disease. This graph here shows the rate of developing kidney disease over a period of 20 years, from 2000 to 2019. What you need to know here, you don't need to even be a scientist to see this. This red line represents Blacks in the US. And what this means is that for every 1 million Black in the United States in 2019, 6,443 Blacks ended up on dialysis. Not just regular kidney disease or low-stage kidney disease, this is kidney disease that ends on dialysis. So for every 1 million Blacks, there's 6,443 Blacks that ended up on dialysis. Now, I'm using the extreme here as an example. If you're Caucasian, this is the line you're on. For every 1 million whites in the country, there's about 1,505 person that ended up on dialysis. So the difference is that African Americans are about 4 times more likely to end up to develop kidney disease that progress to dialysis than our white American citizens. So the burden is very high. Now, why does this matter? Why does this problem matter to our community? And why should it matter to everybody on this call? Dr. Birch mentioned some of this by relating to some of his experience, but let me be more categorical. One, kidney disease, kidney failure is very deadly. So if 100 people start dialysis today, in 3 years, only 50 of them will still be with us. So every 3 years, about half of people that start dialysis 3 years ago will be gone. So it's very deadly. Secondly, kidney failure is not an equal opportunity offender. As I mentioned to you, kidney failure disproportionately affects Black people. 35% of people on dialysis are Black. Thirdly, the care for kidney failure is very costly to the system. So every year, the taxpayer of the United States, all of you guys, the cost to taxpayer to provide care to people who have developed end stage is $40 billion. That's with a B, right? That is actually, by reference, more than the entire research budget of the United States. Now, those are the system costs. That doesn't talk about the loss of income. Dr. Birch talked about initially losing his job, the cost that associates with being on dialysis, the traveling cost, loss of opportunity. But I want to touch base with loss of life. I mentioned the 3-year mortality, but more concretely, for Black men, the Black man life lost to kidney failure is similar to life lost to colon cancer. Think about that. And for Black women, the life lost to kidney failure is similar to life lost to breast cancer. So it's a very, very deadly disease. And this is the reason why this problem matters. This is why I feel like it's an urgent problem, a disease that killed this many people, that hurt many people, that affect that many livelihood. It's a disease that we need to really pay attention to. So that's why this problem matters to our community. And this is why I hope we'll collectively do something about it. Now, that's the first problem. The second problem is, despite the high burden of kidney disease, many people with kidney disease are not aware of it. Most people with kidney disease do not know that they have kidney disease. Let's assume that the 10 people here in this cartoon have kidney disease. How many of them do not know that they have kidney disease? 8 in 10. 8 in 10 people with kidney disease do not know they have kidney disease. So, and the reason is that kidney disease or kidney failure is a gradual process. It's gradual, it's silent, it's painless, except towards the end. Dr. Birch mentioned that he began to taste metal in his mouth. What that happens after you've lost more than 80% of your kidney function. In fact, by then, what is left is about 15% or less. So most people with kidney disease do not feel they have kidney disease until much of the kidney function is gone. Many of you may recognize this handsome gentleman here, Alonzo Mourning, who was a very famous basketball player for Miami Heat. He's very tough. He's not only a Hall of Famer now, but when he was playing, he got the NBA Defensive Player for 2 years. So you know it takes a lot to get that recognition. But Alonzo Mourning practices every day, exercises regularly, but he developed kidney failure and he was not aware of it. In fact, he didn't become aware of it until after they went to the Olympics. And he noticed that afterward, he got the gold medal and all that. It felt like his leg was a little swollen, a little puffy. He went to the team doctor, and that's how they diagnosed him. And I say, Alonzo, you have to get a kidney transplant. You have kidney failure. So if Alonzo Money did not know that he had kidney failure, you can imagine how insidious, how quiet this disease is. Now, some might say, so what is the cause of kidney failure? What is the cause of kidney disease? And I would say kidney disease has many, many fathers. It has many causes. Many things lead to kidney failure. Now, kidney failure, think of it as this roundabout. There are several factors. The impact of structural racism, it's something that we have to address in our society. The impact of socioeconomic factors, this talks about access to opportunities in society, income and jobs and all that. But in addition to that, environment, we know that pollution in an environment is actually something that shifts by region of where people live in. And this will not affect health in general, but there are evidence that suggests that this also contributes to kidney disease. But what I'll be talking to you about today is biological factors, meaning that the things we inherit from our parents. So all these factors, structural racism, social and economic factors, environment, as well as genes, the genes that we inherit from our forebear. And the factor we'll be discussing today fall under this category. And that factor turns out to be a gene called ApoL1. It stands for apolipoprotein 1, but as a short term, we'll call it ApoL1. This ApoL1 is a gene that is present in all humans. But research show that around 4,000 years ago in West Africa, there are new versions of this new ApoL1 that emerged in the human society in West Africa. And from what we can tell, the benefit of this new version of ApoL1 was that it protected West Africans from the parasite that causes African sleeping sickness. So that Africans that have the altered version of ApoL1 have the survival advantage of surviving the sleeping sickness disease. But it turns out from what we now know that having two, one from father, one from mother, not only protects you from sleeping sickness, it also increases your risk of kidney disease. So what nature gave with one hand, it took away with the other. This story, some of you might say, sounds familiar. Yes, it's the same kind of story with the hemoglobin mutation, which protected Africans from malaria, but when you have two, you have sickle cell disease. So nature sometimes basically focuses in immediate survivor. So how did this gene, this altered ApoL1, come to America? Well, through the enforced slavery of Africans to the America during the slave trade, this gene came with Africans to the Americas. And as you know, a lot of the ancestral home of many African Americans actually from the western part of Africa, in large part the modern day Nigeria, Ghana. So this gene traveled during the Middle Passage to Americas, not just to the United States, but also to South America and to the Caribbean, where we know that a lot of Blacks also carry this gene, similar to what's present in West Africa. Now, somebody might say, why is this gene not present in Caucasian? Because the migration out of Africa that led to Europe and to Asia occurred about 20,000 years ago to 100,000 years ago, long before the altered ApoL1 emerged. That's the reason. What do we now know about this gene? First, you might say, so how many Black people in the United States have two copies of this altered ApoL1? It's about 10 to 15% Black. If there are 100 of us on this call, about 13% of us will have two copies of ApoL1, just by the number, if we're all Black. So about 10 to 15% of Black people in the United States have two copies of this altered ApoL1. However, as a manifestation of its impact on kidney disease, when you go on, just generally, you see people on dialysis, Blacks on dialysis, 4 out of every 10 Blacks on dialysis have 2 copies of this gene. That's 40%. So as you move from the healthy general Black population to Black population with kidney disease, and in this case on dialysis, the number increases. To put it in a graphical term, if you imagine end-stage kidney disease or kidney failure to be the terminus of this train system, and that many trains head towards dialysis. So this train, there are different types of kidney disease. This train is called FSGS, focal segmental glomerulosclerosis. It's a fancy word to say that the kidney spurs over. This is what Alonzo Mourning had. It's a very common cause of kidney failure in Blacks. The incidence of it is about 4 times higher in Blacks than whites. So we know it's a very important train in Black community for kidney disease. Another common train of kidney disease going to dialysis is high blood pressure associated kidney disease. We call that hypertension associated kidney disease. That is going to, so in the last 2 years, we know that COVID increases the risk of a new version of kidney disease that we call COVID-associated nephropathy. Now, what is the impact of having the altered APOL1? The impact of having altered APOL1, the first factor is that it makes it likely that the carrier of the altered APOL1 gets on the train that's going to dialysis. Let's look at the FSGS, the focal segmental sclerosis. For example, 7 out of every 10 Blacks that have this diagnosis have 2 copies of APOL1. Think about that, 7 out of 10. When I see a patient in the clinic and we biopsy that patient and that patient has FSGS and a Black, even before I do the APOL1 testing, I know that there's a 7 in 10 chances that that individual carried this gene. What about the high blood pressure? 4 in 10 Blacks. And for COVID, we are finding out to be as anywhere between 70 to 90% of Blacks with the COVID-related disease. Now, for the purpose of research I'll be discussing later on that we are doing here, we are focusing on these first 2 trains, the focal segmental sclerosis and the high blood pressure associated kidney disease, because they represent the largest group of Blacks. If you pull these 2 trains together, they represent the largest movement towards dialysis. So hence our focus. So the first impact of APOL1 mutation, it makes it likely that the carrier of that mutation gets on the train that's going to dialysis. The second impact of that mutation is that once you're on that train, it made that train go faster, right? It makes that train like an Acela train. That's the train lower here, the bullet train. So that it not only makes it likely that one gets on the train, it makes that train travel faster to dialysis. How faster? How much faster? 10 years faster. Individuals that have the altered APOL1, compared to other Blacks, when they develop kidney disease, arrive at dialysis 10 years earlier than other people. So it's a very impactful mutation. It makes it likely you get the disease and it makes it likely to progress. The third problem, you might say, how do we slow down this train? And I would say at this current moment, there's no specific treatment that slows down this train. This is also another sense of urgency. How do we slow down this train? So currently, there's no treatment. That's our third problem. And the last problem that I'm describing to us is that you would imagine, given the number of Blacks with kidney disease, that maybe Blacks should be overrepresented in clinical research. Dr. Birch mentioned this, that there's a need for us to be involved in clinical research. If you look in 1997, this is from a paper in Nature. If you look at the number of Blacks that were represented in clinical trial, this includes kidney disease clinical trial, is 3%. If you look in 2014, 3%. If we look in a more recent time, it's all less than 5%. So despite the high burden of kidney disease, in the Black community, Blacks are significantly underrepresented in clinical trials. And there are multiple reasons for this. But irrespective of the reasons, we need to correct this because we know this is how we discover cure. So we need to be represented in clinical trial. So these are the 4 problems. On the left side, the high burden of kidney failure, the lack of awareness, the lack of specific treatment, and the underrepresentation of Blacks in clinical trial. And this is the problems that we are aiming to address with the clinical trial that we are doing here. We call that trial Care and Justice, the Care and Justice Study. To address the issue of lack of awareness, we raise awareness through education, through presentations like this. But beyond that, we also screen people in the community. So I will talk more about this. So this is under the Care study. Secondly, in terms of lack of treatment, some of the study that have been done in my lab and other groups in the country identified a pathway that drive this gene in the kidney. And there's a drug that's already being used in other disease, rheumatoid arthritis, that can target this pathway. We petitioned the government to allow us to give us funding to do the study, and they have. So we'll be conducting a study that targets this pathway of APOL1 to slow down that trend. And lastly, in terms of the underrepresentation of Black in clinical trials, we plan and we are doing that to address the obstacles that makes it difficult for Black people to engage in clinical trial. And I'll be talking about that. So this is the summary of what we plan to do. This is graphically describing the goal. We have three arms of the study, but I want to focus first on the community APOL1 research engagement. We call that CARE. The goal of CARE is to engage the community, to screen people for kidney disease, and to build a registry of people that have APOL1 related kidney disease. Among people that have been screened, if people have the kidney disease and they are eligible for the clinical trial, then they get enrolled in the second study. And that study is actually the abbreviation of the drug name, which is Janus kinase STAT inhibitor, is the class of the drug to reduce APOL1 associated kidney disease, a mouthful. So we abbreviated it to JUSTICE. So first we'll do CARE in order to do JUSTICE. This would be the two primary goals of the research that we are moving forward with. And we have a cast, I call it the dream team, that will be doing this together. You may recognize Dr. Barrett, who could not be here today because of personal loss, but you'll be seeing Dr. Barrett. She's my co-investigator in this study. Dr. Miles Wolf is the head of the kidney division at Duke. He's a clinical trialist. He's done many trials. He will be working with us on this study. Dr. Chakraborty is a biostatistician who will be working with us in this study. But the real star of this study are our community partners. Because we can do this all we want, we really need to have foot in the community. And our community partners, our flagship community partner are the AME Zion partners in the IL partnership, who are all well represented here today. And thank you for the invitation. But we are partnering with the River Church partnership, and I believe that representatives are here as well, because we want to be able to reach our community broadly and where people are. Community Health Coalition, Patient Ambassador, as well as the Community Advisory Council. We believe that if we do this right, there's an old African adage that says that if you want to carry a load to your head, you don't do it with one hand, you do it with both hands. We believe that by people from academia and our community partners in the community working together, we can begin to slow down this trend that is APOL1. A quick brief overview of the APOL1 study, the CARE study. First, I mentioned the goal is to engage the community and increase the awareness about APOL1 through education. Secondly, we'll be screening people to identify who may have APOL1 related kidney disease. And the number of people we are going to screen in the community broadly, 5,000 people. This is a 5-year study. And so it's a lot of people, but this is the number of people that we have calculated that we need to screen to be able to get a registry that's about 600 people. You might be thinking, so who is eligible to screen? Will I be eligible to screen? Sorry, somebody outside was vacuuming. Will I be eligible to screen? If you meet the following criteria, if you are self-identified African-American or Black, you might say, who does fall into this category? If you self-identify as Black, Black from the US, from the Caribbean, from Africa. If you self-identify as Black, you are eligible on that front. Age 18 to 70, no history of diabetes. You might say, why are we excluding diabetes? Because the diabetes train and the APOL1 train do not seem to be on the same track. We don't think the APOL1 increase the risk of diabetic kidney disease. So diabetes will confound the picture. This is why we are excluding diabetes here. People without history of transplants, people who are not currently on dialysis. Remember, the goal of this study overall is to prevent the trend from arriving on dialysis. So if somebody is already at dialysis, unfortunately, would not really be eligible for the study. No history of stroke or heart attack in the last 6 months, and no history of known HIV. If there are questions on this, I can clarify later on. What is involved in screening for care? So if you want to participate in care, what will be expected of you? So it's a single encounter, which we estimate to be around 1 hour. We'll ask you a few questions about your health. We'll collect saliva from you. It's from the saliva that will extract the DNA to do the APOL1 testing. This is similar to 23andMe, where they can collect genomic material from saliva. We'll also collect urine to see whether you have protein in your urine. Even though kidney disease is generally quiet, but it's not that quiet. Oftentimes when there's problem, kidney disease from APOL1, we see a manifestation of it in the urine by the person losing protein into the urine. So we'll be testing urine for protein. And people that have protein in their urine in significant amount will also collect 2 tablespoons of blood to measure their kidney function. So saliva, urine, and 2 spoons of blood. So that's what the participation involved, and it's a one single encounter. So where are we going to be meeting people? Wherever people are. Part of the design of this study is to try to make it easy for people to participate. So we'll be, as we are invited to the community, to churches, we hope to be able to do this collection in churches, in community center. And also people might say, well, if you come to my home, I'm willing to give samples. Hopefully we can do more of this in a collective center, I think, to be more economical. But we also want to make this possible for people at home so that we can reach them there. And finally, we'll be using our Duke facility, and especially our facility at research at Pickett Road. This is a Duke research facility on Pickett Road. It's conveniently located, I think, next to Durham Academy. There's free parking around, easily accessible, so that people can actually go there to give sample. So the goal is to make it easy for participation. What are the benefits of enrolling in care? This is my second to the last slide. Well, participating in care enable one to get free kidney disease screening, free APOL1 testing, increased awareness and education about kidney disease, contribution to reduction of kidney disease or kidney health disparity in our society, and contribution, hopefully and potentially, to discovery of new treatments of the APOL1 kidney disease. When we diagnose you with kidney disease and you do not have a primary care or a nephrologist, we'll be able to refer you to one, right? People who participate in the one-time study, the CARE study, will receive a gift card for $10. But people who are eligible to participate in the clinical trial that is Justice, as I mentioned, will be eligible. It's a 6-time engagement study, which I will talk about at other time. But Justice is a 6-visit study over a period of 6 months. The gift card for that total will be $350. So people who participate in CARE will have opportunity to be screened to participate in Justice. And so this is my last slide. How can you help? Well, you can help by participating in CARE for screening for CARE. And how could you do this? You can do it one of 2 ways. You can email this email address, or you can call this phone number. When you do, we'll reach back to you to schedule sample collection and to collect information and to see whether you're eligible upfront. And also spread word to family and friends and coworkers. because in order to slow down this trend, I believe that we have to do it together as a community. Thank you, everyone. I think that's my last one. And I'm hoping that we will be able to ask and answer a lot of questions. I hope.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you so much, Dr. Olabisi. Wonderful, wonderful presentation. But there are some questions that have come in on the chat. And so one of them that's asked is, what about persons who are over 70 and healthy as far as the study?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And it's a question my own father asked me. He said, why are you cutting it at 70? So it turns out that the medication we are using for justice, for many of the clinical trial that it has been used for in rheumatoid arthritis, the manufacturer recommend stopping the age, or they recommend the age at 70, because the older we are, the more likely we are likely to have side effects. So as a starting study, we are keeping the age at 70, consistent with previous trial that have used this medication. Now, in reality, there are people that are older than 70 that are using this medication. So it's not like the medication is toxic in people who are older than 70, but for research, you want to maximize benefit and minimize risk. So we are basically sticking within the tradition of the age that the manufacturer sets.
Thank you, Dr. Olabisi. There's another question that comes up, and you mentioned a medication. Is this a new medication that's currently in use, or is it new, or is it currently in use?
So this medication has been in use for 80 years. So the name of the medication is baricitinib. Baricitinib. It's actually a medication that has been used for the past 8 years for rheumatoid arthritis. So it's been used pretty much, it has a long history to it. So it's not a new medication. But why are we proposing to use it in this, for this disease? It turns out that the way the body turns on the APOL1 gene, the gene by itself is quiet. It has to be turned on. It has to be expressed. The mechanism that expresses this pathway, this APOL1 in the kidney, can be blocked, is targeted by this medication, baricitinib. So in culture, when we use baricitinib, it blocks APOL1. It prevents the cell from expressing the APOL1. So, but it's not a new medication.
Thank you. There are a few more questions. One person wants to know if persons that are pre-diabetic, based on their A1C, are they eligible for this study?
The short answer is yes.
Oh, okay, good to know.
Yeah, and the reason is this. The reason why, so diabetes causes kidney disease when that diabetes has been in place for years. In nephrology, we think 10 years or thereabout. So if you are pre-diabetic, we don't think that your pre-diabetes will cause kidney disease. So we'll treat you as somebody who has not had diabetes in that context.
Very encouraging there for those who are interested in the study. Now, we know that we've had a lot of people that have contracted COVID-19, one of the variants of coronavirus. Are they eligible for this?
I would say yes with a modification. So what we found out is, so if you have had COVID and you've had vaccination and all that, and you don't have any known kidney disease that what we call collapsing kidney disease, yes. So I would say for majority of people, let me make it simple. History of COVID does not exclude you. So having COVID does not exclude you from this study, from screening. So the short answer should be yes. Having COVID will not exclude you from participating in this screening.
Okay, something else that's encouraging. Dr. Olabisi, has there been any connection found between arthritis and kidney disease?
That's an excellent question. That's an excellent question. So the short answer is this specific kidney disease, not really, but there's a common thread that we see, and the common thread is inflammation. The train that I showed you, it appears to be that things that causes inflammation, either directly or indirectly, turn up these APOL1 genes. So one example, some medication that we actually prescribe, there's a class of drug called interferon. Interferon is a hormone, cytokines that our body produce to fight infection. So when we have infection, our body produces cytokines. It turns out that the same cytokines that help us to fight virus also turns on the APOL1 in the kidney, and it can cause kidney disease. So arthritis itself is a form of inflammatory disease. Viral infection causes inflammation. So diseases that causes inflammation have some kind of relationship, a perverse relationship with APOL1. Not all of them, but that's what the research is telling us. Now, between arthritis itself and kidney disease, not necessarily, but inflammation as a whole, long-term inflammation.
Dr. Odisi,
Yes, sir.
someone that is born with one kidney, are they more likely to develop kidney disease with that one kidney?
Are they more likely to
develop kidney disease?
The short answer is yes. And I'll explain why. So most people have we have two kidneys. And each kidney, the part of the kidney that filter, we call it nephron. Each kidney has about 1 million units of that. So in the right kidney, you have about 1 million on average. In the left kidney, you have about 1 million on average. And then you are released into the wild, right? We are born with about 2 million on average. It turns out that unlike skin cell, unlike liver cell that can regenerate and make new ones, kidney cell does not regenerate. When you lose those nephrons, they don't reproduce themselves. So you can imagine somebody that starts with half the endowment, that person is more vulnerable over a lifetime. So somebody that have one kidney is more vulnerable to develop kidney disease over a lifetime because they started with less number of nephrons. They started with less endowment of kidney number. It does not mean that person will develop kidney disease. It just means that compared to somebody with two kidneys, the one person with one kidney is more at risk. Now, you might say, what about people who donate a kidney? Now, that is in a sense of adults. So the person that's born with one kidney has had one kidney from childhood. The person that donates kidney as an adult. Those are two different pictures. But the person that's born with one kidney is more at risk over a period of lifetime.
Wow, that is very interesting and good to know. Now, this other question is a two-part question. Is can dietary changes help curb kidney disease? And can kidney disease be detected from your normal lab work from an annual physical?
I'll answer the second part first. And that's a very good question. Yes, so kidney disease can be detected in a normal chemistry, which your primary care can order, which will show, or even urine test. So in your normal physical, when you see your doctor for your annual physical, when they send the lab, yes, they can detect low kidney function in the normal lab tests. What about food? Does nutrition, can it prevent or slow kidney disease? The short answer, to be honest, is at this point, if you haven't developed kidney disease, we don't know of strong evidence that shows that if you eat certain food, it slows down kidney disease. I would say not necessarily. I wish it's true, but we don't have robust evidence that tells us that.
Okay. We're going to give space for a couple more questions. And someone is asking from this person's understanding that long-term use of blood pressure drugs can potentially cause damage to kidneys. And if that's the case, is it considered kidney disease?
So let me try and rephrase that a little bit. So high blood pressure does cause kidney disease, cause kidney failure. In fact, if we rank it, diabetes is number 1, high blood pressure is second close number 2. So if one has a high blood pressure, 10 out of 10 doctors would say you have to treat that high blood pressure with blood pressure medication. So now, if the kidney worsens, one cannot blame it on the high blood pressure medication. If you look at two group of people, both of them with high blood pressure, one group are taking blood pressure medication to lower their blood pressure. The other group are not taking any blood pressure medication. The group that's not taking blood pressure medication is more likely to have a lot more complication with their kidney, with stroke, with heart attack, and all the bad things. So we know that having high blood pressure and taking medication to lower that high blood pressure is the right way to go, right? So I would defer from this question that high blood pressure can cause kidney disease. That's really not the case, if I can put it candidly.
You are the expert, sir. Our last question is, if you can talk about the levels of protein again, and individuals who have no protein in urine, and what are their chances of contracting kidney disease?
That's a very good question. So we know that even though kidney disease is silent, when kidney is hurting, if you pardon my using this illustration, the tear the kidney shed is protein. When the kidney is hurting, it sheds the tear of protein in the urine. So even sometimes before we see a reduction in the kidney function in the blood work, oftentimes we'll see loss of protein in the urine. So presence of protein in the urine is the canary in the coal mine saying something is not right. So protein in the urine is not a good sign. And it's an early sign that's saying somebody's got to do something about this. Now, the more the protein in the urine, the worse the picture. In fact, if you are looking at a train that is moving fast, the more the protein in the urine, the faster that train is going to dialysis in general. If we can reduce the amount of protein that's coming out in the urine, oftentimes we are slowing down that train also. So protein in the urine is a very powerful tool. It's a very powerful thing we look at as physicians. And also when we are treating, it's also something we look at, because if our treatment is working, it will reduce the protein in the urine. The way our kidney is put together, it's put together that it doesn't lose protein in the urine, except if something is wrong.
Oh, wow. So that sheds some light on one of the reasons why we get a urine, a urine sample.
That's right. And that's why we are using urine sample in this study as a screening. So if we screening with your urine and we see protein in it, initial study we do is a qualitative test, then we send that urine to the lab to measure how much urine protein is in that urine. And the way that our body is designed that way is that a lot of the protein in our body, a lot of enzymes, we are listening now, a lot of the chemical reaction in our body is protein-based. And every day, we filter our blood through the kidney several times a day. So the kidney must prevent the loss of those essential protein in our body from leaking out into the urine. So that's why our kidneys are designed that way. They are very jealously keeping the protein on the inside until something happens.
Oh, thank you. The last thing that we will address is the registry. There are some who wanted to know about joining the registry and what information is asked and how long does it take to join?
Great question. I see Dr. Birch has his hand up. Let me yield to him first, and then I can answer that question later.
By all means.
Thank you, Dr. Obolisi. I just wanted to say to you were saying earlier about the protein in the blood and how important it is, because even now being having a transplant, I still have to get blood work every 3 months to get it checked. And as I found out, and this goes back to our research, what we eat. So I have to be very careful with what I eat and what kind of proteins are in my drink, what kind of not medicines, but I had a brain freeze. But vitamins I may use or something like that. I have to be very careful even when I go to the gym, making sure that I'm not taking the wrong thing to drink or eat and mix, to make sure that I keep everything level in my body. So even now, and I think it's more important that, you know, we do this even before you get to this point, that we get our blood and make sure the doctor gets that blood, that urine test.
That is so correct. And I think, Dr. Birch, you raised two things that I think two opportunities I missed. One, in terms of diet, I think there was a question about diet. I should say something about salt, added salt. Salt, we know, can raise blood pressure, even though you may not feel. So high blood pressure is another silent killer. And we know there's a connection between high blood pressure and kidney failure. So added salt to food increases the risk of high blood pressure, which increases the risk of kidney disease and stroke. So if one evidence is available, I would say reducing the amount of salt in the food is one thing that we know is beneficial. But there's also a second thing, a common medication that is taken that we know if one takes it regularly can hurt the kidney, and we call those NSAIDs. So NSAIDs are ibuprofen, Aleve, those, not Tylenol, but ibuprofen and Aleve. If one takes those regularly on a regular basis, it can hurt the kidney, right? So if one has to watch a medication that, okay, this medication, I have to be careful about it, I would say that medication will be ibuprofen and Aleve. Food-wise, I would say, you know, be gentle with the salt. Yeah. And I think, Dr. Dowdy, I think if you please remind me the question before I went to Dr. Birch previously.
Oh, sure, not a problem at all. It's the question about joining the registry. What information is asked and how long does it take to join? So
the whole encounter, basically when we see the person, we ask a few questions about, you know, family history and whatnot. The total experience should be about 1 hour. It should be within an hour if we do this right, give or take. But the first thing, we'll ask a few questions to make sure that that person is eligible, right? We'll check the weight, we'll check the height, because we want to measure BMI of the person. And then we'll collect spit in a collection tube, similar to what is used for collecting saliva, if you will, for genetic testing. In our saliva, we have cells, and in those cells, we can extract genomic DNA. So we'll collect saliva, and we'll give a cup for that person to pee into. In that urine, we'll be able to check protein. If the person has protein in the urine, we'll collect blood. So within about an hour, give or take, we should be able to finish the encounter. For people who are in care, that's all that will be required of the person. If you are doing it, if we are doing this in a community setting, that will be probably in a church setting or a community center, or even at your home, if we know. But preferably, if you are available, you can come to Pickett Road, which is our research center, where there's free parking, and you can schedule ahead of time, where we have professional staff that will attend to you there. There are many studies going on there. So this is not the only study there. So they really know what they are doing. And the encounter there also will be within an hour. I hope that answers the question.
Dr. Olabisi, it is my understanding that your team is willing to go to communities to assist people with joining the registry. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Doc. Oh, is there something else you want to say, Dr. Olabisi?
No, I'm just saying, if you are interested to learn more and you have questions that are not being answered here or answered adequately, or you are not clear about it, please, you can email that same email address or call our number. We'll be on the, myself and my staff will be on the receiving end, and we'll try and respond to you as quickly as we can. But like I mentioned before, I believe that this is not just a problem for the academia. This is our problem. And I believe that we have the tool in our hand as a community to begin to do something about it. This is why we feel strongly that this study should not just be parked in Duke and say, well, you come to Duke and let's figure it out. This is why we feel like we have to engage with the community, get the buy-in of the community, get the partnership of the community, and together that we can really slow down this trend. And that's my hope.
That is our hope as well. Thank you so much, Dr. Olabisi, for such a wonderful presentation and this partnership. And I'm sure that there are others who are very interested. And this webinar will be made available. I think there was some information in the chat about that, but it will be made available so it can be shared with those who are not able to be with us this evening. And I want to thank you for everything that you are doing for people, and particularly Black and African-American people. I want to thank Dr. Birch for his excellent testimony and to be very transparent and to share his struggles and what it was like for him. And he used the word trauma.
Yes.
It's been traumatic for his family. So I certainly want to thank him as well.
Yes.
I want to thank the attendees. And if the attendees, if you will put in your email address in the chat, that way we can provide you with some follow-up information. And we most certainly appreciate you doing that as well, so we can stay connected. That is all that I have, unless you have some final comments, Dr. Olabisi or Dr. Birch.
No, I'm just full of gratitude, Dr. Dowdy. Thank you for the energy. Thank you for the leadership, and thank you for welcoming me and you and the rest of the leadership of AME Zion. I've been really very encouraged by the spirit of service to the community that you exhibit. And thank you, Dr. Birch, again, for being vulnerable to share of your experience. I'm grateful.
All right.
Thank you.
And I do want, I'm sorry, go ahead, Dr. Birch. I did ask you to give comments.
I was just saying thank you for the opportunity, Dr. Dowdy and Dr. Olabisi. I think I want to get this to our grand lodge. So thank you for this evening.
Thank you.
Yes, and I shall be sharing this as well. I want to thank Dr. Perry. He is an AME Zion minister who they have a very similar partnership with Yale, and he is with us this evening. And it's good to see you, brother, and I want to thank you. Thanks so much. And we'll be chatting. All right. Well, this concludes our webinar for this evening, and there will be other opportunities to have other webinars as well. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.